when the tanker gets here in a minute, he said, you can't film it. I said, all right, why is that then? He said, because it's a Muller tanker. He said, we had a Co-op tanker yesterday. I said, but surely Arla can't mix their milk with Muller because Arla are doing tests on Bovaer. If you look at what organic means, organic still means you can use 6 chemicals on your ground. Things which I've got a nitrate tester, and we tested the nitrates on some fruit and veg. And anyway, 9 out of the 10 Waitrose organic vegetables had more nitrates in than ours. All of them tested for pesticides when we tested them separately. And do you know why that is? It's not because the challenge is we go by the wording organic. Most of the organic produce that comes into the UK comes in from China.
Oh.
Rachel, well, they're 18 months into the trial and nearly everybody's off the drugs they were on.
Wow.
So this is really starting to push the point of good quality food and the nutritional value.
Now, as many of you may know, Mark the Bowler Hat Farmer has had his accounts hacked, both social media and bank, I think he said. And I think you might see why in this interview. The project he has set up is really inspiring and he's doing tremendous things which will upset the powers that shouldn't be no end. So although this is a long interview, it's well worth listening to all of it because it brings a lot of hope for our future. So it'll be a good episode to listen to when you're cooking your Christmas dinner. And coming up after Christmas was a very interesting interview I did with Madeline Hunt, the General Secretary of the Heritage Party, on why she says that them cancelling the mayoral elections was actually a good thing. So keep an eye out for that after Christmas, and regardless of whether you love or loathe the festive season, I do hope you have a good one. See you soon. Enjoy the interview with Mark. So I'm here today with Mark Byford, who many of you will know as the Bowler Hat Farmer. Mark, welcome.
Rachel, good morning, darling. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So today I'd like you to give us an update, an overview of what's happening in the farming community, what's going on, and also I gather you're doing a very exciting project to free us from the tyranny of supermarkets and whatnot. So I'd love you to tell us both of those, please. So over to you.
Rachel, thank you, darling, for giving me the time on the show. Okay, let's backtrack a little. So I think it must be 18 months, 2 years ago, you and I did a meeting together in Needham Market.
Yep.
And I think we were quite...
You press-ganged me is what happened.
Well, yeah, but you did buy a ticket.
I know, but I was going to sit at the back and hide.
No, that was never going to happen. And we both come to realise very quickly on that event that there's a lot of people have a lot of misconception around what's going on in the food and farming, including the farmers who, some of those got quite irate on the night and, wanted an argument and, But once you break things down, and this is what I tried to do this year, was to really we went on tour. Uncle Ray died in January, leaving us in a position we needed to leave the family farm. So as a result, I said to Gloria, look, should we go on tour and do a 7-month tour of the country? Well, I think actually I told her 1 month tour of the country, but it ended up at 7.5 months. And I said to her, look, I know enough about food and farming to be able to go and do talks on this. Let's go and put some talks together. I advertised on social media across all the channels and just said to people, please, if you are a freedom group, if you want to hear about farming, book us up. And people booked us up all over the country. We did 109 talks.
Wow.
Spoke in front of 20,000 people and had an absolute whale of a time, I've got to say. And I think, Rachel, what I would say among everything else, we are led to believe we live in a very dangerous time. We're led to believe we live in a very dangerous country now. Freedom of speech doesn't exist, right. And I accept a lot of that is true. However, we travelled for 7 months, and for 7 months, not one single second did we ever feel threatened, not feel that people wanted us to be there, not wanting to hear what we had to say. So I think we're still very blessed in this country, I've got to say, and we can believe all the shit what's going on in social media and we can believe how bad things are, but really the majority of this country are still beautiful people who just want good. Okay, so we travelled around the country. Now, when I left home with a very clear vision that I needed to tell as many people as possible about how bad the farming situation was, and about how food shortages were coming, about how the government is manipulating farmers to be able to get them to cease farming. Everything what was going on, I needed to tell people. And we drove down to Land's End, and within a couple of weeks of us driving down to Land's End and doing some speeches on the way down, my thought set had changed. And a bit like our beautiful country and visiting beautiful people, we were going to see farmers that were starting to understand where we are, but also starting to understand what they needed to do about it. So how they farm is changing. What they farm is changing. So gone of the, I must use glyphosate, nitram, and I must grow wheat, to suddenly farmers are going, hang on a minute, that doesn't earn any money. What we might want to look at is growing a bit of vegetables, getting some chickens on the farm, doing this, and starting to become a lot more chemical free. Now that causes its own offences, let's say, to the system, because the system is hell-bent on closing down the farms. It's hell-bent on keeping as much chemicals and pharmaceuticals in the industry, because that keeps us sick. The sicker we are, the more we rely on them on the other end of the scale to give us pharmaceuticals to make us better. So lots of farmers are starting to understand that if we go down that road, the pushback from the system is horrendous. Now, I know I witnessed this, when we was out on the road, we would have organisations phone us and say, you really shouldn't be doing this talk about this subject. Okay, can you tell me why? Whether that might be someone like the Soil Association or, the dairy industry, whatever, and, we don't want you to go in this. But why? Because I've done the research myself, and this is the outcome I've come up with on the research. And if you can't tell me differently to that, which they never can, because, Rachel, you know as well as I do, when you start digging into who actually gives these people these ideas, it's always the people who fund them.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the funding, yeah.
Yeah. And when I was working with the Land Workers Alliance, I spent 6 months with them as an area agent for them. And one of the things which came to play was they pulled me to one side at one of their, I was at a meeting, there was a couple of thousand people there. They pulled me to one side and said, Mark, you did a breakout session and, you're very right wing. And I said, well, I'm not right wing, I'm just right. I'm definitely not right wing. And then they came back and said, what's your thoughts on open border policies? And I said, well, they don't work. It's quite obvious. Well, that's because you're racist. With the best will in the world, for those who don't know,
I think your partner might have something to say on that.
My partner's black Nigerian. I definitely know I'm not racist. Do I have an issue with people coming up and landing on beaches without paperwork? Yes, I do. And not just, there's a million things wrong with the immigration side. However, so I stood my ground, and in the end, they basically just had to ask me to leave. The reason they kicked up at me, I found out later, was because I had questioned where their funding came from. And every time I looked into their funding bodies, once you've got past the first level of funders, whoever funded them was Bill Gates, George Soros, the Clinton Foundation. At every level, they were in there. And they wonder who's passing this information to them and telling them what to do. And they're not alone. The NFU's no different. DEFRA, you look into any of our organisations, our big corporations, anything, they're all in the same position. So you're never going to get the correct information getting to the ground unless someone's got the absolute balls to stand up and call it out. And that's where I think new media has caught the powers to be out, because they can't control us. Yes, they can try and silence us. Yes, they can, have your channel taken down. But these days, people find you again, and, and this is all the things we're up against. So as we were travelling the country, we started to see this was happening. And lots of farmers were, being told, shut up over different things. I remember we called into one of the Arla farms, one of the farms that sells to Arla, and he said to me, he said, when the tanker gets here in a minute, he said, you can't film it. I said, all right, why is that then? He said, because it's a Muller tanker. I said, sorry? He said, it's a Muller tanker what's coming. He said, we had a Co-op tanker yesterday. I said, but surely Arla can't mix their milk with Muller because Arla are doing tests on Bovaer. And he said, oh, yeah, but it doesn't matter because the farms what are doing Arla. He said, we're not using Bovaer at the minute. I said, but they've said they've got 30 farms that are doing tests. What 30 farms are they? Because nobody knows. And, you know, once you start to unravel a lot of this, right, you start to understand quite quickly that the system's just corrupt. End of. There's no niceness in there at all. They do not care about anything other than the fact that they've got to earn a profit for their shareholders.
We used to deal with supermarkets with my father's nursery plant business, so we know. I have first-hand experience of exactly what they are like. It's like dealing, well, dare I say the mafia? That might be an insult to the mafia. I don't.
I think it probably would be. Yeah, at least they have some morals. They're very much family-driven, at least. And so, as we travelled around, what we started to witness from the farming side was, yes, lots of the big farmers don't like what Mark's got to say, because when I turn around and say, you know, for me, I genuinely believe that all of the farmers that have come out across the country and said, oh my God, inheritance tax is going to kill farming. Really? As far as I'm concerned, inheritance tax is just another nail in the coffin, and with the best will in the world, it's not going to be the end of the ball. What we need to do is get a change of government that will give you a change of policy, and that can go away. Now, what we're seeing is real things in the background that are going on that the farmers aren't taking any notice of. Real things. Things like this Arla testing was a classic example, because when it first came out, and I know lots of us jumped on it and we were, oh my God, this is disgusting and blah, blah, blah. Rachel, they don't care a flying Frederick. If the cows die of the tests, they don't care. If we die of it, they don't care, because the reality is we know that this is part of a much bigger plan. They are going to depopulate the planet of cows to start with. So if a few die, they've had a bonus.
Yeah, that's true. It's for anyone that hasn't researched this, just look on the Absolute Zero report, and they do intend to phase out all beef and lamb by, was it starting at 2030?
2030 to 2050. By 2050, there will not be any in existence, that's for sure.
No.
Now,
eating the bugs.
The bugs. Now, bearing in mind as well, Rach, we've also got the other side that we are a problem because we are the carbon they probably want to really get rid of. And people go, don't be so silly, Mark, you can't say things like that. But I would say to anybody, this isn't my information. This is information I've researched, and it's out there in the open domain for people to go and do their own research.
Yeah, you're not just being far right again, are you, Mark?
No, I'm just being right. And so when you start looking at these real agendas that are being paid for with vast, vast sums of money in the background, and I mean billions are being pumped into them. You know, if we look at net zero, one of the things that the farmers would tell me as I was going around the country is, and I would get farmers who would say to me, in fact, Rachel, the one we were at that night, the guy was arguing about net zero and about the carbon footprint and so forth. And it's like, I can't comprehend that a farmer could even possibly take that seriously when we all know that carbon is the gas of life. And without it, we don't have any trees. Without trees, we don't have oxygen. And we know that if carbon is 0.04% in the atmosphere and you want to get it to zero, but at 0.28, the trees stop growing, something doesn't stack up. We cannot get to net zero. It's an absolute impossibility.
People have not thought this through. They've just been indoctrinated and brainwashed.
Absolutely.
As soon as you start to study it, it falls down very quickly.
It falls down very quickly. So once you've understood that it falls down very quickly, and you're doing the talks and the tour and people challenge you, you know what to say. As we travelled, more and more of obviously, we were doing more and more speeches, and more people starting to follow us on social media. We got up to about 85,000 people by the time we finished the tour. And for us, the truth is starting to get out there. And lots of farmers that we were going to see, when I'd spoken to them a year ago, had said to me, Mark, you are crazy. This is nonsense. This isn't happening. And then when I turn up on their farm a year later to see them and they go, here, you spoke about so-and-so. I've looked into that and you're right,
Brilliant.
And so the farmers are starting to wake up now. What I will say is, unfortunately, the big farmers are the ones who don't see it.
Well, they can't. They can't afford to.
You've knocked the nail on the head.
They will get the legs kicked out from under them.
So if people understand how much subsidies are being paid out for farmers to get involved in growing wildflowers for the birds, for instance, or planting trees or depopulating their farm of cows, they start to understand the way these farmers have to hang on to the land is to do things they perhaps don't agree with or can't accept to agree with. All of the farmers we saw who are making definite, real, pure change on their farm are farmers who have bought land recently or are young farmers.
That's
right?
interesting.
So what we're seeing is the people who have sold their house in the city for $1.5 million, they bought a plot of land out in the country and they've put a log cabin on it, or they've bought a place what's got 20 acres, whatever. They're the new style of farmers, and they're the ones that excite me, Rachel.
Mm.
And the reason I say is because I think we're actually slowly stepping back to what you and I both come from the market garden side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this all over the country. Lots of the community farms that are setting up as a result of wanting to set up community farms that what are really what we're deemed as a market garden.
Mm. It's bloody hard work, though. Do you think they're going to have the success with it? Because it's not until you try it that you find out just how hard it is.
It is, but what I think is out there, Rachel, is a massive army now of volunteers. Mm. And I think one thing we've done on the tour is we've woken up the masses, maybe not the masses, we've certainly woken up an army of people. And if I just give you an idea, this in the last 2 weeks, we've finally gone ahead with the website launch for foodfindershub.org. Mm-hmm. And there's 4,500 farmers on there so far, farmers, growers, producers, butchers, bakers, fishmongers, greengrocers, whatever it might be, advertising themselves as people selling fruit, veg, meat, fish as an alternative to people going to a supermarket. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So direct to public.
Yeah. So there's a directory there where the farmers and that advertise and the public can search that. And as we travelled the country, we started to realise that I asked one question in every solitary meeting which Gloria took a picture of, and that was me stating one question. Is there anybody in the room who would like to buy chemical-free food direct from a farmer, grower, producer, directly or indirectly, so via a farm shop or a box scheme, whatever it might be? Mm-hmm. And 100% of people would put their hand up. Easy. I then sent those photographs every time we took one to all of the farming groups I belong to.
Genius.
And said to the farmers, I know you don't want to hear it, but here's, we were in, we was in Southampton, and Southampton, 150 people said, we was in Glastonbury, 200 people said, we was in, wherever we were. And the farmers finally started to listen. And as a result of that, a lot of them now are on that, what I'm going to call the transition. So this isn't, something you do on a Saturday night, if you're a bloke and decide you want to be a girl for the night, put a dress on. This is a real transition where farmers are starting to understand we're over here and we're boxed into this corner. We're using seed and fertilisers we can't get out of using, because if we don't use that fertiliser, that seed won't grow. If we don't use that seed, we've got no other seed to use. If we don't grow what they tell us, then we don't get the subsidies. If we don't sell it to the people we sell it to and lose money, then we won't get the subsidies. And it's just a perpetual cycle of stupidity. And for me, the farmers who are starting to transition and make the change are saying, a classic example, a guy phoned me the other day, he said, Mark, after you come and visit, we changed a few things on the farm. He said, today was our first day of selling stuff at the farm gate. He said, we haven't got a shop, we just got a little stall at the farm gate. He said, we took £37.
That's and he said, for your first day?
Well, that's what I said to him. He said, we put some signs about the village and on social media saying we were going to be doing eggs and potatoes. He said, and we took £37. He said, now, I know it's not a lot of money. He said, but I picked that stuff this morning, sold it today, and took my £37 today.
Mm.
He said, I just delivered 200 tonne of grain to the local mill. He said, and I won't get paid for another 8 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And in the 8 weeks,
2 months.
and in the next 8 weeks, they'll message me and they'll tell me it isn't as good as grain as they thought it was, and it's only animal feed, so they can't mill it. He said, and they'll drop the price by £22 a tonne. He said, and I'm suddenly another £4,400 out of pocket. He said, that £37 in my pocket. He said, I can go to, he said, I can go and buy some food tonight now. We're seeing that at loads of farm gates, Rachel. There's a guy called David Wheatley who's up towards Wisbeach, and he's been putting out a lot of posts lately, and he's been selling his peonies to the public direct. And as a result of that, he had 200 tonne of wheat left, and so he set himself a task on social media. Would anyone like to buy some wheat? Would you like to buy it for to add to your your dinner, or would you like to add for your chicken feed, or would you like to to set it, whatever? It's and I think he was about whatever it was, 25p a kilo or something stupid, and he sold tons of it, tons upon tons, and everyone's going, really?
Well, next year people are going to have to mill their own flour, because December this year, isn't it coming in that they've got to fortify it with a form of folic acid that
yeah,
recognise, and it's not. There's lots of studies showing that it causes more harm than good.
Absolutely.
So I've been looking at. I'm going to have to start buying wheat berries and grinding it down and making my own bread if I want to eat bread.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are now starting to look at that. So as a result of everyone thinking this farmer was completely barking mad, suddenly this guy's making a lot of sense. Now, the reason I mention it is because obviously lots of farmers are starting to realise that's the way forward. Now, as we travelled the country and spoke in front of 20,000 people, I'd left home, and I'm the first one to accept and have to admit this, I hadn't really got a big plan. I just wanted to go and tell a lot of people what we were doing. And that worked. We were really successful at that side of it. However, when we got home, and we've been back at my parents' now for a month. I say home, we actually haven't got a home at the moment, but we're at my parents'. What came to play was, as I started digging through all the information and having a chance to actually analyse what had gone on the tour, it became very clear that the one thing there was a big request from the public for farmers to produce really good quality food that they could buy direct. So we said, okay, this to me means we need a new food system. And I say new as in no longer the one we use. Now, the one we use is farmers grow, produce, it goes into huge commercial pots on 99% of our food scale, goes into a massive pot, which is either supermarket or the supermarket supply chain. So at every solitary stage of that, the farmer loses out and the public lose out, because the farmer loses out on the financial side and they're pushed down to go down roads they don't want to do. Public always miss out on because of quality. Always.
Yeah.
And the things which are getting overlooked in the in quality are, what's the shelf life of this thing? Because I would say if this product was not made 100 years ago, don't buy it. Because I guarantee you 100 years ago, what did we really have? Well, probably flour, dairy, fruit and veg, and meat was probably about it.
And the preservative was salt.
Salt. And and once you start getting past that point, you start to really understand how much our food industry's changed. And so as we travelled, more and more people were telling us different things. And as we came back home and had the chance to analyse all that and really get a grip of what that would look like, it became very clear to me that we need a new food system. And I think there's 5 major things what fit within that food system. And they are farmers' markets, farm shops, community stores. And we've got a company that wants to fund and help set up community stores. Home delivery systems. So people like the Good Food Project, for instance, who deliver directly to your door, all organic produce. They've got 3,000 items, for instance, that they can deliver directly to your door. Order it on the website, a few days it rocks up on your doorstep. And then you come down to food hubs. And they are my favourite, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
While we were touring, we visited an organisation called Organity.
Yes, I've heard of them. Doc Malik buys his food from them.
So Nat, who runs Organity, we've stayed with her and her husband Darren loads of times, and they're just beautiful people. But Nat, in setting up Organity, came up with something, in my opinion, revolutionary, because lots of people have done food hubs and box schemes across the country, and they never seem to quite gel. They don't quite seem to work. Long term, they don't seem to stick together. And Nat came up with something, what I think is just the icing on the cake. So she has made it all about the community. Right. So 30 people in your local village all order your food from that one organisation, Organity, and it all turns up to an agreed delivery point in the village. Let's say the church, the village hall, the pub, whatever it might be, someone's garage, whatever. And as a result of that, the community, those 30 people, come together at the same time to pick it up. They have a cup of tea, they talk, they build that community spirit. Oh, we're going litter picking, we're doing this. And you start to get back to a community forming again, because we all know that a big part of 2020 was about breaking communities. And those communities, Rachel, have never repaired themselves. And I don't just mean as in a town, a village, a city, even family communities. We were so divided as a family over, jibby jabs and things like that. I'm the only one of my family, including my children. They all took it, despite Dad's words. And nothing I can do about it. They're all grown up. None of them wanted to hear it. You're just a conspiracy theorist. Now half of them have been ill and we're further down the road, and I wish I'd have listened to your dad. Interesting times. So things are changing though. And I don't know if anyone's ever read the book. I think it's by Seth Godin. Yeah. Called Tribes. Mm-hmm. And that's brilliant. And it really puts into emphasis how, your family is a tribe, but your work friends are a tribe, and the people at the football or the pub's a tribe, and you belong to all these different tribes, and all the tribes might not interact with each other. And I think one thing that has come out of this, Rachel, from a lot of people since 2020 is we've all found our own tribes.
Definitely.
And,
good thing.
I know that I've got a tribe of new media people that if I've got something I really want to talk about, same as yourself, we know who we can go to. They want to get that same message out. And that's how we move, in my opinion, move all this forward through these tribes.
Yeah, we're just, as Seth Godin would say, we're just the early adopters.
Absolutely.
We're spreading it out.
And that's what I see with Nat and what she's achieved with her food hub. So she built the first food hub locally to her. She's Gerrard's Cross. She built that one. She's got it really successful. And now she's started launching them in Wendover and Bedford and different places about the country. And I think she's up to about 12 or 13 different hubs now.
Wow,
and for me, that's the answer and solution. So local farmers, local producers, local growers come together. That gets dropped at Nat's, along with, I'm not going to say mass produced, but like tinned tomatoes or washing powder, whatever that might be from smaller companies. And that all comes to her. She's got a warehouse there. People pick and pack the orders, volunteers, and that goes out on a van to different hubs across the country. That, to me, is the way forward.
And that's where she's being successful, because she's supplying the sundries, not just the food.
Yes, and that's the other side, I would say. The problem that farm shops have is that lots of people say, I'd love to buy more with the farm shop, but, they only sell the meat, they produce the eggs, the dairy, whatever it might be. So what I see, Rachel, is this new food system, and, Nat and I have been on this conversation talking about this, is the next step. What we think needs to happen is that there is a wholesale side to Organity that would potentially then supply farm shops, community stores, because not only do people not want to support the supermarkets, they also want to support good quality food.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I stopped buying from Riverford, because they used to have all the other stuff and then they stopped. So that sort of forced me to go over to Abel and Cole, who do have the sundries, and they're so blimmin' woke with all their saving the planet nonsense. I'd much rather buy from Riverford. But, you know,
But he's just as bad because he bought all electric vehicles.
oh, did he? Oh, goodness.
Nat's definitely not woke.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do go to the farm shop, but as you say, they've got so little. I buy as much as I can from them, although they've just moved premises. So I'm hoping, because their previous place, they could only sell things they grew or made.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah, yeah.
hoping the new place they can, because my dad said, oh, I could offer them some vegetables that I've got left over from my allotment. And they said, no, we can't take them because one of the neighbours complained.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll be able to buy a lot more from them.
We met the guys from the Electroculture, Andy and Francesco and Charlotte, and I love those guys and what they're up to. We've enjoyed different parts of the country, visiting them and working with them on different schemes. We were down in Glastonbury doing a talk, and I finished doing the talk, and Gloria sat at the back of the tent talking to a guy, and I went across to sit down. And Gloria says, you need to talk to this man. This guy's he's designed this little thing about 20 years ago, and it's about the size of a pen, and you have a crusher, and you can crush a piece of meat or fruit and veg, for instance, and pour the juice into this little thing, and it tells you the nutritional value
Oh, wow.
of the food. And I was like, Jesus, this thing's absolutely bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
And so as we went, and I got into the journey on that, and Andy and I were from Electroculture. We were down in Somerset, down at Kevin's place, and we had the opportunity to ring this guy, and we was chatting with him about this thing. And that really struck home to me because, Rachel, food, it's all good and well saying food's organic. For me, that doesn't really mean a lot, I have to say.
Yeah, it's got to be nutrient dense.
It's got to be nutrient dense. And we've also got to, if you look at what organic means, organic still means you can use 6 chemicals on your ground.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply to me. I want to be a chemical-free farmer.
Mm.
So as a result of all these things coming together, I spoke to this guy and I said, it'd be really great to do some trials with this piece of kit to test nutrition. And he said, well, actually, he said, we're trialing it in India at the moment. And I said, really? He said, yeah, we're trialing it on 1 million farms.
Wow.
I was like, that's a proper trial.
Mm.
And he said, what's happened is the Indian government wanting to get rid of pharmaceuticals from their diet have given 1,000 farmers, 1 million farmers the job of saying, please grow organically and list who you sell your food to, and we will track how healthy they are over the next 5 years. Well, they're 18 months into the trial and nearly everybody's off the drugs they were on.
Wow.
So this is really starting to push the point of good quality food and the nutritional value.
But just making a video showing I bought this spud from the supermarket and here's one I grew earlier, and just comparing them and going through people's weekly, just even a whole meal, putting it through and saying shop bought, farmer bought. That would just, be incredible.
Absolutely. Well, look, Rachel, one of the things which I've got a nitrate tester, and we tested the nitrates on some fruit and veg. And anyway, one of my mates who said to me, he said, oh, Mark, because you're not certified as organic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop having my veg off you. I said, that's no problem. Yeah, so where are you going to go? He said, I'm going to go to Waitrose. They've got an organic range. I said, okay, can you do me a favour? When you go, send me a list of what you buy, and we'll come and do a nitrate test on it. And he said, yeah, sure. He's one of my best mates. He doesn't question it. So he sends me a list, and I pick those off the farm, and I go to his, and we test 9 out of the 10 Waitrose organic vegetables had more nitrates in than ours. All of them tested for pesticides when we tested them separately. And do you know why that is? It's not because the challenge is we go by the wording organic. Most of the organic produce that comes into the UK comes in from China.
Oh.
Rachel, organic means nothing out there. It's just that they stick a stamp on it and someone at this end accepts it and they say, well, it must be, it's got organic stamped on it.
So you pay so much more in Waitrose.
So this is where it came to prove to me that the food system, we know it's corrupt. We know that, 90% of the stuff they're selling in their shops is poison. When you walk into a supermarket, and here's my classic, when you walk into a supermarket and there's one aisle, just one aisle, what says the healthy food section.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rest of it?
Well, indeed.
So, that's what you're up against. So as we're starting to put all this information together again, and we're starting to get farmers to understand, to get registered on the site, I then decided that if we want to launch this new food system, we're going to need to fund it somehow, because we want to advertise it. So we've set up now, the foodfindershub.org sits inside a CIC,
Mm-hmm.
a community interest company. Now,
Yep.
I wanted to go down the road of a PMA, but unfortunately, I also want to be able to rape the system that the government has of all the funding I can possibly get.
And also, you won't get a bank account for PMA. Apparently, it's very, very difficult.
It's more than difficult, yeah. So I got the CIC set up. We've got the bank account set up. Now we're off. So now, long term, I want to get as much government funding as I can. Not because I want to fall into their trap, because they know that they've got to give us that money to do some good. So why aren't we taking it? We pay it. It's our money. We're not getting it back. And if we don't get it back, they'll have it out the back door somehow. So my reckoning is that we've got to change this system. So I decided to put out a plea to the general public. And it was Charlotte, in fact, from the electroculture side, who said to me, Mark, she rang me late one night and she said, Mark, can I have your bank account details, please? Because I want to donate £1. I said, okay. She said, I want to donate £1 every month. I said, okay. She said, and I want to encourage other people to do the same. I said, okay. So we put it out and people started donating £1, £2 a month. And then we added it to the website. People could make a straight donation and, £1, £10, whatever they wanted to donate. And then we changed the website now so they can do a subscription on the website. So they go to foodfindershub.org, they can click on the sponsor button, the donation button, and they can donate as little as £1 a month straight from their card, bank account, into our bank. And that's starting to come together really quickly now. And people say, oh, where's the money going to go, Mark? Let me tell you, because it's important. We know that DEFRA has budgets of bloody billions, and they are doing nothing at all to support the farmers. That's the bottom line. We have done more good in a few weeks than it is untrue of what DEFRA are trying to achieve. So we've been helping to promote farmers markets, farm shops on social media. Lots of them saying they're getting new customers as a result of it. Now, the next step for us is to start building an infrastructure with the likes of Nat and Good Food Project, that we can now be able to say to people, search your area. If there isn't a farm or a shop in your area where you can go to find what you want, then it'll automatically default you to the Good Food Project, Organity.co.uk, and then you'll be able to be in a position that you can then be able to sort your food out and be able to get into a better food system. Now, we've also got a volunteer button on there, Rachel, and I have to tell you about our volunteer button because it's been mind-blowing, the people who have come forward. I had a guy message me the other day. He said, I just volunteered on your website. He said, I'm a sign writer, and I can't help but notice you've driven 10,000 miles in your camper van. It's blue and white, and wouldn't it look nice with some sign writing on it? And I messaged back and said it would really look great with sign writing on, but sadly I don't have any funds for that. And he said, could I do it for nothing?
No.
He's a retired gentleman. He's, staying in Norfolk at present with his daughter, and said, I'll come to you and we'll get it done. And I was like, wow. And then I had a graphic designer message me, and she said, I don't know if this is of any use to you. She said, she said, I don't know if it's any use to you, Mark. She said, but just so you know, I'm a graphic designer and I do wall art. She said, so if you've got any big areas on farms that want brightening up, outside farm shops, if you've got any, just tell me where it is, she says, and I'll concentrate and get to there, and I'll be able to, get this message out for you. And if you want any posters designed, anything at all, just let me know.
Wow.
I was like, wow. And then we started putting out the opportunity for people to volunteer in really one of 9 areas, which was to cover helping, with a food hub, help setting one up, help with deliveries, help on community farms. Rachel, we were inundated with people wanting to be involved. Now, the next thing for us we've got to look at is, I believe, county organisers, because we're getting people all over the country get involved in the volunteering. And in some areas, there isn't anything for them to do much, at this point. So what we're looking at is having county organisers that will then work with those people to find them placements. Because I think in 24 hours, I placed 7 people onto community farms. But they're in the areas I know that people are and places are. So this is going to take a lot more organisation. But the next thing I'm looking for, on top of the county organisers, is one person to work alongside me to look after the 50 county coordinators.
Yeah.
And start actually looking at this from, because as much as we all talk about decentralising things, there is some things that need to be centralised. And I believe this is one of them, So because we know there is thousands of people out there who want to get not only our food system back on track, but our country back on track. There's a new campaign doing the rounds, and we added it to the website this week. And a friend messaged me and he said, Mark, we're running this new campaign. It's called Tidy Up Britain. And I said, I love it, but I'm busy on this, and this. And I don't want to say I dismissed it, because litter is one of my biggest pet hates. And we saw loads of it travelling about the country. But I was busy and I kind of dismissed it. And 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I know exactly where that fits in. Because for me, I talk about health of soil and building good quality, densely nutritional soil. Well, the only way we're going to have that is to not have rubbish in it. So microplastics are an issue, broken down, glass, all the things what are in the soil, what we need to eliminate. So could we then help with this project and help remove the crap from our, water sources, our fields, our rivers, whatever it might be? And so I put out a couple of days ago, that we'd like to get people involved in litter picking, and people have been joining on that as well. And this will just funnel them through to a bigger organisation, which is countrywide, organising litter picks. So I've kind of come to the conclusion, Rachel, that as much as we went away with the intent of doing the CIC and the Food Finders Hub is now in place, is building nicely. We've got lots of people behind that, getting that into where it needs to be. And I'm not trying to step away from that in any way. I should be 100% committed to that. But I think there's also other things we need to consider, because the minute we talk about food, we have to talk about health. The two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I don't believe we can have good quality food without better education. And I think that education needs to start at school level. And in fact, probably preschool level, because I think it needs to go back to parents, because unfortunately, in our lifetime, we've seen a home where dad went to work, mum stayed at home and looked after the kids. Mum did the cooking, mum taught the kids how to cook. And within 20 years of that, mum had to go to work as well, even though then probably part-time like my mum did. She dropped us at the gate, she went to work, she picked us up, summer holidays, we went fruit picking, cleaning with mum, whatever was needed. And where we are at now is we've got to get people back to that. Now, financially, how that happens, I don't know, because I think most people watching this will go, Mark, lovely idea. The problem we've got is, unless 2 of us work, we can't have the things what we need. But Rachel, the problem is, and I do have to say this, I walked into a shop a few months back to deliver their veg, and one of my close friends from when we were kids, and I mean from nappies, our mums were best friends, walked in and I said, oh, morning fella, how you doing? And he was buying a vape, pack of 20 cigarettes, 2 cans of Red Bull, 2 packets of crisps and 2 bars of chocolate. And I said, Jesus, you've got a nice healthy breakfast there, fella. And he went, yeah, that'll get me sorted out for the day. Now, I don't know what that cost, but the next morning he was in there getting it again. And the next morning he was getting it again. So let's say it's, I don't know, 30, 40 pound a go, right? So a couple of £100 a week he's spending just on his side of what he thinks he needs to feed himself. His wife then put on social media that she needed to go to the food bank because they couldn't afford to feed the kids.
Oh.
And that pisses me off, Rachel, because here we are, people telling me they can't afford to buy good quality food, yet they buy all this shit. You know, I bet if you go through people's direct debits, they've got Netflix, they've got Sky, they've got all these things that do you or do you not really need. Paying a TV license.
Expensive mobile phone contract.
You know, and you look at all these things and you think to yourself, people's priorities have moved and they've been guided to move over that time. So my thought is we've got to concentrate from the CIC point of view on education, the education of what nutrition looks like, how we grow food, how we look after our body, everything in that aspect. So we've got to look after the health, we've got to look after food, we've got to look after education. And I also think within that we have to understand where new media fits in, because we can't build those three things without new media, because conventional media will not give us the opportunity, because of the agendas what are in place, to build an infrastructure for those things. So, and that's where I think where new media will help with that. So, so from my side, and all the volunteers, you know, that are coming on board, and the other trustees and things, as we've been moving forward, it's like, right, we've got an understanding now of where we're trying to get to with the food, but around the food also fits education, fits health, fits new media, and that all fits in. So when we say to people, look, we need you to help us build a new system, you know, there's 70 million people in this country, allegedly, might be 100, but we don't know. If there's 10 million of those that want to pay £1 a month for a better system, let's all get together and let's all work collectively together and start getting this in place and start getting the money in place that we need to really be able to build something, you know, successful. Catherine McBean's working with me. Love Catherine. You know, she's got a lot of energy to bring to the table.
She'll get things going.
Million projects on the go. She's like me. She's hell-bent on where we need to get to with this, with the health and the education. So this, for me, really is to, you know, come on, tell you, yes, the tour was a success, Rachel. We had a ball. We did Land's End to John O'Groats. We've met some amazing friends. We've got land in Scotland. We got up to 250 acres in Scotland if we want to go up there and farm it at some point, that we can now start doing community projects on. We've got land in Grimsby been offered to us. We've got land all over the country. We've met with some amazing people, you know, and I've come back to this. We was talking about the electroculture side as just one of the organisations which we've teed up with. When we were in Grimsby, we went to visit a farmer who's got a zero carbon, and I say zero carbon, compost, what he started making. They grow the grass lays on the farm, the straw on the farm, and the willow on the farm, and they turn them into a peat-free compost. And it's brilliant, I have to say. And took it all over the country with me, used it for people. People have done demos with it. They love it. But it's all produced on his 5,000 acres. Turned into compost. He's bagging plants on his farm. Everything's there. And this is what we're starting to see. We was in Pontefract, and we were down there, and a guy by the name of Richard Higgins, who's designed a system for making compost. Fascinating guy. You know, got this compost system, what goes in the garden, you make everything. And you can use it on the small holdings, definitely. Because of the system, it turns anything, including thorns, trees, anything, into just compost within 28 days.
Wow. Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
At some point. Is it this big galvanised thing?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's brilliant. It's, in my opinion, it is a little bit. Richard Higgins. And I think it's called H1, I think it is, HH1, the model. And then he does bigger ones for farms and so forth. But he's an interesting guy, and his compost was really rich in nutrition, really rich because of how it's produced. Then we went to see another company which made my day, because from a company called MAD, and they have been working on producing maggots for protein. And I thought, oh, I'm going to love to go and do this interview. I'm going to rip them to shreds. And when I got there, guy says to me, so I said, look, just so you know, Matt, I said, I need to be honest on what I'm going to say here. I said, from my side, I'm against protein coming from maggots for food. And he said, I'm glad you said that and got it out of the way. I said, because I'll tell you now, I've got no desire to be here and do this interview in a nice manner. And he said, right, just hold hard a minute. He said, let me explain where we are. He said, so DEFRA in the past funded all this going on, right? Because they knew there was going to be food shortages. And as a result, they put millions into these maggot farms. But what they come to realise very quickly was for every £1 in value they produced in maggots, protein, they produced £10 worth of manure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly there was no nutritional value to the protein. So now what they do is they generate the 10 tonne of compost, and it's beautiful stuff, I've got to say, and they cook the maggots and grind the maggots up and put them back into the compost.
So now, we don't have to eat them. Good.
So, well, it's not just that. And people say to me, oh, Mark, I don't agree with that because it gets into our food system. I don't buy it. Insects are on the ground every day of the year. People don't worry about it, right? But what I will say is that the chitin, the chitin, whichever we call it in this country, the chitin that comes from the maggot is then put into the ground. Now, chitin, the reason that plants behave in a certain manner, and you'll know this probably more than I do, but one thing I did, and coming from a horticultural background, I kind of got the basis of this, but when a plant comes under attack from greenfly, the minute it starts being attacked, it's with the chitin what attacks the plant. Once the chitin touches the plant goes, oh my God, I'm under attack, I need to defend myself. So it starts getting all hormonal and starts pumping itself up and getting bigger and stronger to fight the chitin. Now, if you now put it in the compost and add it to the ground, the minute it touches the root structure, the plant thinks it's under attack.
Mm-hmm.
The minute it thinks it's under attack, it becomes bigger and stronger. Right, now we have a great thing going on. So now, when a greenfly used to come along and go, yum, 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 and eat the plant, instead now the leaf's that thick and that it can't bite it. So now we've ended up with a natural thing to keep away the insects. And, so the pesticide is there now as a natural component. And this is where, doing the tour for me, the things like that, what I learned, and things like that I experienced, and I've sold, helped them sell their stuff now by social media and that, and just love it. Madcompany.com. People need to go and look at this stuff. It's brilliant. And so as we start to put all these things together, Rachel, you start to understand, hang on, if we launched a community farm and we added the MAD products, the peat-free compost, the nutritional compost from Richard, we start putting in electroculture. Now we start growing vegetables at 30 tonne an acre rather than 3 tonne an acre.
Yes. For those people that don't know, do you just want to quickly explain what electroculture is?
Well, shall we? I don't know if we ought to, because it's a forbidden factor.
It's a bit woo-woo. I have done some videos on it on my Successful Garden Design YouTube channel. If you
listen at you.
Yeah, I've got it up in my veggie patch. So
the idea of electroculture is very simply, on the periodic table, there used to be a thing called ether, which is the energy from the atmosphere. And it suddenly, some years ago, disappeared, like it just stopped being there. And as a result of electroculture, you can bring that energy into the ground, distribute that energy throughout your ground, and transfer that into the root structure of your vegetables and make your vegetables be a lot more nutritious and a lot bigger. And I mean a lot bigger, it is fair to say. But what I will say is electroculture doesn't work on its own. It needs really dense nutritional soil. It needs the mycelium built up. It needs bacteria added. It needs good compost, good fertilizers, and all of that. And that's the way you build. It's a bit like layering. You can layer all these things up to end up with really good soil. So now you start to understand, Rachel, instead of 3 tonne an acre, we can get 30 tonne an acre. Now, is that relevant?
Density nutritious food. Because
as well,
the old thing, like, bigger vegetables, but no, that was just NP and K, Slov Dom. So this is like really good quality stuff.
Yeah, And I'm talking about the kind of vegetables we had when we were kids, where you could taste it, the
Like
flavour when you
lettuce
ate it.
flavour.
You went, oh my god! So starbursts in your mouth. And so I think what we're going to see, Rachel, as we move this forward, and people start to understand more about the nutritional value, because lots of nutritionists have been contacting me, and Gloria's now doing a nutrition course with one of the people now to learn about that side. Is start to understand how we now transfer that into the animals as well. So we get a better quality meat. Because if you grow really good veg and you feed really good veg to animals, you're going to get really good meat.
Yes.
So this is the transition we're on. And when I talk about this transition, this is what farmers are now looking at. Farmers are going, okay, for the last 50 years, we've done it like this, and all we've done is killed the soil. Yeah. I mean, when we had our soil test on Uncle Ray's farm, it had 4.9% life in it. 4.9% couldn't grow. Everything was gone to clay. All the goodness has gone out of it. And over the course of that 2 years we were there, we started putting back the nutritional value into the soil via manures and compost and wood chip, and just to break the clay up. And once we've broken the clay up, we could then start to add the bacterial teas and the mixes and the compost and the manures and as a result of that, we then ended up with this great system what worked, and we grew beautiful, tasty vegetables. And year on year on year, that needs to be built on. And this is about, we travelled all the way up through Lincolnshire, and even in Lincolnshire, Rachel, where most of the land is reclaimed, quality peat soil, it's all turning back to clay.
Wow. All
of it. Land's End John O'Groats, there was very little topsoil we saw what's not clayey. And farmers saying, yeah, it wasn't like that when I was a kid. You've killed it. So the transition's happening.
That is really good news.
It is happening. What we've now got to do, and I think what we're going to see, Rachel, is I've always said that by 2030, 80% of our farmers will be gone.
Yeah, sadly.
And I still think, sadly, that needs to happen. Because the 80% what are going to go are the people who won't make that change.
Yeah.
The 20% that are left are the 20% of people that will go, actually, there's another way to do this.
Trouble is,
and then as their soil gets...
feed us all.
Well, but I would disagree. I would say as that soil comes better and better, they'll be able to produce more and more from their land.
True.
So as one goes up, one will go down. And we're starting to see a lot of people now buying up land, 1, 3, 5, 10, 50 acres. And they're the next level of farmers. And they're the ones who at the moment are going, right, how do I now grow vegetables? How do I now do this? And that's the bit where it's down to people like us to get these people to understand. And, one of the things Gloria's been talking to me about is, making a range of videos that people who have bought some land could learn some basics.
Yeah.
And, and have them as free downloads, what they can download them and, subscribe to, whatever, that we can say, right, okay, you bought a piece of land and, if you're thinking about having animals in the future, you need to think about fencing. This is what we would look at. Have you got a water source down for where you need to put your water pot? All of this stuff, because there's so much stuff which we have, obviously I've been in this job for 52 years. So I've got a bit of experience, and there's lots of people out there, lots of the farmers. We was in North Yorkshire, up towards Rotherham, and we got talking to a lovely guy called David, who's very heavily into using crystals on his farm. And he's a beef farmer, but all of the stuff he does is, he douses his land, he goes out with his jiggly thing, his dowsing thing.
Pendulum. That's
the word I'm looking for, thank you. He gave me a pendulum before I left, and he said, this is how you use it. And I've been using it quite a bit to do things, But, he said, I won't let them graze the field unless I put dowsing rods over or a pendulum over to ask certain questions. And he said, and Mark, I've got the healthiest cattle in the whole of the area. Mm. So, Rachel, whether people want to believe this stuff or not, there is something in it. I'm probably, when I left home, I'll give you an example of this. When we left home in February, I would say I'm pretty close to being an atheist. And I say atheist, I don't mean that in the sense of I don't believe in something. Yeah. But I don't believe in religion, because to me, religions are made up pile of bullshit from the Roman Catholic Church, and we all follow suit. Do I believe in God? I don't know what God is. I believe that the universe will provide. Gloria believes the God will provide. And my cousin, who's a pastor, says, listen, guys, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever you want to call it, whatever it looks like to you. But what I will say is, I definitely on my tour found a more spiritual side to myself, and a much more spiritual side to a lot of stuff where, and this probably goes back to, I remember when Andy and Francesco very first came to the farm to install our electroculture, and they came out, and I thought, oh, bless him, he's walking around the field with a piece of quartz and 2 metal rods, and he thinks he's going to find something, bless him. And then when he went bang to the point, and I was like, Jesus, that was lucky. And then, you know, then different things that Francesco spoke to me about, and I started to work out that actually he's not that crazy. And we were in Scotland, and we visited this beautiful lady, Elizabeth, who's got a 200-acre farm she's hardly using, and she was looking for some help and assistance. And on her land, she's got this beautiful beech forest.
Ooh.
Acres of it. Not one tree apart from beech inside it. And the mulch was like, you know, feet deep on the ground, and it was just mushrooms everywhere. And I stood there and I filmed. I walked right down. There was a river right at the bottom of the valley, and I walked right down to the river and I filmed it all. And there was massive, great big crystals everywhere. And I messaged Francesco with a video, and I said, mate, I've just found fairy heaven. I kid you not, if ever I've been a place what had that magical aspect where for the fact that I couldn't see the fairies, but you could have seen fairies living there. And I came away from there going, wow, what an amazing magical place, you know?
Mm.
Just surreal. And as we travelled different parts of the country, Rachel, again, another classic example, we was up at the WTF festival. And while we were up at that, we had the pleasure of going up. They got a big wood at the side of there, and water's bubbling out the ground. And wherever we went, if we could get natural water from natural springs, we did. And lots of people said to us, oh, there's one in that forest, or there's one there, the one, you know, down. And we would go to rivers and, you know, test the water, and if it was good enough to drink, we'd drink that rather than shite out of the taps. And we didn't die. And I thought, wow, I think we should complain about this, because we should have died by now. Now, you know, the reason I laugh about it is, Rachel, because when we got above Cumbria, there's so much water, they don't know what to do with it. It's running out of every orifice. You can imagine every mountain's got it bubbling out the sides. There's waterfalls, there's springs, it's everywhere. Rivers, it's beautiful. Down this part of the country, we don't have that. And that's one of the reasons they've now got us pinned down on farmland, on what we can grow, because they've gradually sneaked away all the ponds, all the rivers, and they've dried them out and put it all underground in pipes, and now they want to charge us for it. And I think people have got to start taking back some ownership, Rachel, personally, how this all fits together. The food, the water, I'm going to claim that Class M is the same thing, you know, nutrition, the health side, the education, it all fits in. So I would say to anybody who's out there, if you are interested in helping us, assisting us to be able to build a better system for food, drink, education, nutrition, all of that in one place, and involving new media. And I actually think we'll get to the point we can raise enough money to help fund new media channels. That's where I'd like to get to, Rachel, because
you need to chat to Darren from the Light Paper, because he's just started, and this interview will go out on it, Clear Air FM.
I did hear about that the other day. I've not spoken to Darren recently, so I'll catch up with him, yeah. That's one of the places I think we need to, as you know, as the CIC, put aside the food hub here, you know, put the CIC, then that's where the funding's going to. We need to be able to fund new media, because it's that new media what's going to push the truth.
Yeah, because I want to come off YouTube next year. I'm sick of the censorship, and I feel, you know, I've done my time with educating the masses. The stuff we're doing now is niche, and it's for those people. We can't keep giving our energy. I mean, this is going to go out on YouTube, but we can't keep giving our energy to these types of platforms. So I'm going to pull back. I want to de-Google myself, which means the channels are going to go, I'm afraid,
Yeah.
people. But I don't care. I want to put my time into Clear Air FM, support them, and Substack at the moment. They've not done any so far, touch wood and whistle. They haven't done any censorship. So they're going to be my two outlets. And we need to stop shopping in all of these, like Amazon's, the supermarkets.
100%.
Just be supporting each other, because if we all did that, their system would collapse incredibly quickly.
Incredibly quickly.
Time, energy, and money. So you need people to support you. I will sign up when we finish this call and start donating. You need volunteers. What's the name of your website again, where people can?
Foodfindershub.org. Foodfindershub.org.
Okay.
And it's really simple. And then someone will drop you a message if you volunteered to, if you want to volunteer, to say that we'll be in touch. And then over the course of the next couple of weeks, as we get the coordinators in place, we'll then start coming back to people. Some of those will be contacted really quickly, whether it's about littering or farms. But, as different things launch in different areas, we'll be bringing on different things. So, Rachel, the only way we're going to get ourselves out of this, because no one is coming to our rescue.
No.
Right? That's for sure.
Yeah.
The only way we get out of this is to build the system we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, for me, we've seen lots of people talk about lawful, legal, all of that. Great, love it, brilliant, knock yourself out. All I want is a new system.
Yeah.
And if we build that new system and build it properly and robustly, it will be there in the future for all of us. And that, to me, and the only way that's going to get funded at this point is by us funding it.
Yeah, and £1 or £2 a month is nothing. We can all afford that.
Well, as I say to people, if I turn up at your house once a month, Rachel, and you make me a coffee, it'll probably cost you £1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's the simplest. Someone said to me the other day, well, I worked out, he said, I was going to buy you a coffee each month. The coffee, if I took you to Nero's, was going to cost me about £5, so I've stuck £5 a month in. And I was like, yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, because, how many of us would take one of our friends out for a coffee and not think anything of it?
Yeah.
But when you look at what you're actually paying and what you're getting for it, fuck me, what's it cost to make a cup of coffee? 4p?
Yeah.
So people have got to start putting their money and their energy, like you said, things like the light and things like that, the new media, people have got to start putting that energy into the real things what matter.
Yeah, and because it's all very well being keyboard warriors and YouTube warriors and complaining about everything, but if we're not doing anything differently, we're never going to get anything different.
Rachel, what was the expression? If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah, that was me plagiarising it. So, yes. Mark Byford, you are an amazing human being. Thank you so much for
Rachel, darling,
you are doing.
Kindness for having me on the show is noted.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to support what you're doing, both financially and with our time and energy, and I will put this out on all my social media platforms while I have them.
Big love to you, darling.
And you.